Hi, and welcome to Everything is Gnocchi, where we celebrate, reimagine, and remix my favorite culinary tradition. My name is Zach, and I've got a wild recipe for you today. We are making gnocchi out of Oreos. This is a remix recipe. Now on the Everything is Gnocchi spectrum that goes from Italian classics on one end to totally bizarre remixes on the other, this is all the way at that end. This is gnocchi that does not exist in nature. I've got two ingredients for us today: Oreos, double stuff in my case, and ricotta cheese. Now I'm going to start by separating the cookies from the cream. And I'm going to save the cream so that we can use it to make kind of a reconstructed Oreo gnocchi sauce situation later on. And then our ricotta here is whatever kind of ricotta cheese you like. I'm straining it just by letting it sit in some paper towels to soak up some of the moisture. I'm gonna bring my Oreo cookies into a food processor and process it till we get a really fine, powdery texture. We're trying to mimic flour here. Great. It's time to measure. Our universal gnocchi theory says that all gnocchi are made of 1 part flour to 2.5 parts gloop. Our flour today is our Oreo crumbs, or again, anything that's gonna mimic that flour consistency. And our gloop traditionally is ricotta cheese or riced cooked potatoes. And there are no rules here. So anything that would mimic that consistency and texture and moisture is going to work as gloop in the base of our gnocchi recipe. So I'm gonna come to a scale here, measure out however many Oreo crumbs I have. I've got about 80 grams of my Oreo crumbs in a big bowl here. If you're doing the math at home, 80 times 2.5, it's gonna be about 200 grams of ricotta, so I'm gonna measure that out right on top. Once I've got my flour and my gloop in a bowl, it's time to mix. I'm gonna get in there with my hands. You can use a fork, a dough scraper, a combination of all these tools. Now our goal here is not to knead, we're just trying to bring it together. Your goal is to get all of your flour and all of your ricotta to touch, just long enough and your mixture is homogeneous. We're gonna put this in the fridge because our ricotta-based dough is gonna be easier to handle cold, but we typically let our gnocchi have a rest for about half an hour. We're not letting any gluten relax here like we would in a more traditional potato version, but we do want to give our Oreo crumbs a chance to absorb all of the moisture in the ricotta and become a firmer, more stable dough when it's time for us to roll it out. I'm gonna get this in the fridge and then it's time to make our sauce. Okay, now I say sauce, but I'm doing a deconstructed, reconstructed Oreo kind of thing, so I'm just gonna take my Oreo cream that I set aside and put it in a piping bag so that I can pipe it on top afterwards. Now you can also melt your sauce. You could put it in a squeeze bottle and warm it up in the microwave. You can melt it very, very gently on your stove. Thing is though, this is basically shortening, and if you get it too hot, it's going to separate and just become this oily mess that tastes just like Oreo cream, but is really, really oily and has fallen apart. So I'm gonna recommend you don't get the cream too hot. You don't toss your gnocchi in the Oreo cream like you might a more traditional pasta, because it's gonna break that Oreo cream. Now this is gonna be really simple, but you should definitely get creative with it. This is a dessert pasta, so to speak. So think anything you'd put on an ice cream sundae would be great here. Oreo gnocchi with hot fudge, with caramel sauce, with sprinkles, with whipped cream. Really, you can go crazy if you're making this dish your own. Let's roll out our dough. I'm gonna head to an unfinished wood surface, but any clean, flat surface will do. And I'm gonna use enough flour on my work surface to keep things from sticking. Easy does it on the flour. We're not making pizza here. We just need enough to keep things from sticking. I'm gonna take some of my dough and throw it onto my flour here. I'm gonna coat it in flour so that it's easy to work with, it's not sticking, and ideally, I'm gonna shape this piece of dough into a cylinder, and then roll that cylinder out into a snake, and then divide that snake into individual gnocchi about the size of your thumbnail. Once we've done that, it's time to give them their ridges. I'm gonna add some flour to my riga gnocchi, my gnocchi board. Now with a heftier potato dough, I would really press the dumpling into the board and get the ridges and a little dimple, but these are pretty delicate as far as gnocchi go, so I'm just going to lightly brush them across the surface so that I get the ridges around my entire dumpling, but I'm keeping the dumpling intact. I'm not changing its shape too much. I want it to be pretty dense. Now I've worked with this dough before and my hands are used to it, but it's pretty sticky. So if you're not having it here and instead of doing this whole rolling, shaping thing, you just want to use some spoons to scoop out a little gnocco-sized piece of dough out of your bowl, roll it in your hands, shape it from there, please do that. I won't tell the Italians, we're breaking enough rules here anyway already. And io non me frega niente. And to cook them, I've got a pot of boiling water. I didn't salt the water, and I'm just gonna drop my dumplings a couple at a time so they don't stick to each other as they get in the water. You're gonna cook in batches, so once you've got 20 or so gnocchi ready, feel free to drop them in your water here. I'm gonna give them a quick stir to keep them from sticking to the bottom of the pot. Now we don't put gnocchi in a strainer because we cook in batches. We're just gonna fish out the finished gnocchi once they float to the top. These don't even really have to cook. There's nothing raw in them. This is just to warm them through and help everything come together. I'm transferring my Oreo gnocchi to a plate to cool and dry off. If you put them in a colander, they'll stick together. If you put them on paper towels, they'll stick to the paper towels. I want them to cool and dry just a little so that we're not eating soggy gnocchi. This bag of Oreo filling is like my childhood dream. You know, come to think of it, there was this cupcake shop in our hometown that on Tuesdays would sell frosting shots, and for $2 you could get just like a 2-ounce cup filled with the frosting of your choice, and then as a teenager you would just eat that. I hadn't thought about it till now, but that's probably why I'm here. I like each gnocco to get a little filling put back on so the entire Oreo gets reconstructed as pasta. Okay, I'm gonna eat one. I love these so much. These are so weird because they taste just like Oreos but feel like gnocchi. Like because of whatever's in Oreos. Let me try that again. I mean, Oreos have just such a distinct taste that you know immediately that it's an Oreo, but Oreos are famously crunchy and these are squishy. So the whole thing just kind of like hurts your brain until you put it back together again. And they just make me laugh every time. I hope you've seen that by breaking down how gnocchi work, we can remix the ingredients and reimagine them in new ways that are fun and meaningful to us. And how something as simple as pasta can connect us across cultures and communities and generations. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you make these. Let me know what I should gnocchi next, and I will look forward to seeing you next Gnocchi Thursday.